Right, quick video to show you how to propagate yeast from yeast using yeast. And in this case we'll be using the sediment in the bottle of Old Rosie cider, 3 for a £5 at my local supermarket. So we'll be using sediment in the base of those bottles to transfer and build up into our turbo ciders. I did say originally I was going to pitch 12 of those on top of a yeast cake from a previous perry. I've decided not to do that because I think this is probably the best step. Now, what we are going to do is make sure that all our equipment is nice and clean. You do, when you deal with yeast, have to have things actually sterile. Now, that's slightly more than sanitised and certainly a lot more than cleaned. However, I'm not going to go over the top with this. I'm going to do a good job of it. However, if I was making beer, I would make a very good job of it, because we're only dealing with turbo cider, and I will be using the power of my nose to decide before I pitch it whether the yeast is good or bad, and have a backup measure in the form of the freeze-dried yeast. Equally, I have yeast on the cake for a perry, as I said earlier. So I'll show you how I do this. There are a few bits of extra equipment, but if you like building stuff, if you like taking things apart, and the possibility of electrocuting yourself, albeit at very low voltages, this is the job for you. Now, you might want to give it a go, you might not, you might say, no, sod that, I can't be bothered. So, I'm going to show you how to do it. If you choose to do it, do it. If you don't do it, I don't care. So, change of angle. Not a great angle, but what do we need to do? We need to separate the sediment from our OR and put that in a receptacle so that we can drink it, but we need to make sure that we keep the good stuff. Now, these bottles have been sitting in my fridge for a little while and undisturbed, so therefore all the good stuff has sunk to the bottom. If you shake it up, that's going to be a waste of time, because it's the crud at the bottom is the stuff that you're actually after. So make sure that your bottles have been sat for a little while. A couple of days is great. Ideally, if you're going to bring it straight back from the supermarket, try not to shake it up, but that's not going to happen on the conveyor. So see if you can actually make sure that you save that. So first of all, I need to make sure, because there are a couple of ways of doing this, and if you bear with me 1 second. Right, so a number of ways of doing this is, first of all, you tip the beer or the cider off to about there. Try not to disturb it. Stick it in a jug, and then drink it. Now, what you need to do before you do that is make sure that this bottle is nice and clean, because there's bound to be some rubbish and all sorts of nasties hanging around. So personally, I give it my Star San, which is good. There are other things available to do this. One of them would be to use vodka. Vodka is pretty good. If you give it a good clean with some vodka and make it nice and clean. First of all, rinse it under the tap. Make sure there's no sort of bits of dust and debris on it, because the idea is you keep it as clean as possible. In fact, as I say, sterile. What you would do normally is take yourself a flask, such as, give it a nice boil, make sure that it's sterile, because what I would normally do would be to place it inside that flask and let that sit for a couple of days and slowly build it up using some dry malt extract and boiled water. In this case, I'm not going to bother. I'm actually going to use apple juice straight out of the carton. Let's hope that it's fairly clean and good for us. As I say, after a couple of days, when it's got going, you will see there is a little bit more yeast. If it smells rank, nasty, don't use it. If it smells quite nice and to your nose cidery, you'll know if it smells bad, yeah? You know, when you pick up a fish, there is a point that a fish doesn't smell good, yeah? Although it's fishy, there is a point that you think that's not very nice, yeah? And especially if you pick up chicken or meat and that smells of fish, then you're in trouble. So, equally, that doesn't work for some things. I've discovered that dog shit will always smell bad, okay? So don't do that, and don't put it in your beer anyway. So if you give me a second, I shall regroup and get myself sorted for you. Right, okay, what I've done, I've given them a quick wash, rinsing, making sure they're kept upright so I don't disturb the sediment, and I've sprayed them with my Star San, give them a little wipe around. Now, something you can do if you happen to have such a wonderful thing, I did mention vodka, you can put vodka around it. If you've got some pretty strong spirit, I don't know, some Ouzo or Sambuca or something like that, before you take that lid off, you can do that. Now, I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. Yeah, probably not, because this particular alcohol isn't that strong, albeit it's enough to catch light. It is actually catching light, and it's catch light all the way around. So, a nice bit of darkness for you. Too dark for me to find a light switch, but found the light switch, here we go. So, I've actually flamed that, so hopefully there's nothing kicking around in there. So, I've cleaned this as well, this being, in my case, I wish you were beer bottle opener, and I'm going to take myself a jug. So, there's no point in you really watching, but I'm going to show you anyway. Alright, I'm going to take the lid off very carefully and put it on some silver foil, which has also been cleaned. That's what I'm going to do once I've poured this lovely stuff off. Try not to disturb any of the sediment in the base. See, I pour most of the liquid off because I want to drink that, and there you go, there's some good stuff at the bottom. Now when I uncapped that, I didn't push it off too much, so that's sort of still in there because they're sterile when they're put in the bottles. So the lovely goodness, oops, go that way, there's the camera at that end. The lovely goodness is there. Give it a swirl around, smash that up, and mix it all them up. There's still a bit caught at the back, so I want to make sure that all that what you refer to as crud is taken into solution. Now, what I've done earlier is another one. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep one in the bottle because there's no real reason for you to take it out of the bottle. You could, as I say, I'm going to add apple juice to it. Normally you'd add dry malt extract in there. I'm going to keep one in the bottle as an experiment versus the one that I'm going to put in my jar with my stir plate. Now, over there, I know it's a chess box, an old chess box. In fact, I think it was backgammon. I'll show you that in just 2 seconds. I made a stirrer in the bottom of this jar. Is, it says, I'm going to pull it up the side with this magnet. With the fun. Oh, he's dropped it. I'm not going to do another take. He slowly brings it up. Oh, I'll tell you what, I'll turn it around so it faces the actual rare earth magnet as opposed to a piece of cladding which is on the magnet. It's always a winner. There we go. Now, that is moving that out of the way. That's a, I must think for these cameras. That's a stir bar. It's made, I believe there's a magnet in there, and outside of that is PTFE tape, the stuff that plumbers use that you put round pipes to make sure that you've taken up all of the gaps. It's PTFE. You can buy them on the internet. They're a couple of quid. They are a couple of quid. And I'll show you just 2 seconds how that works with the power of a Scrumpy Jack glass. But meanwhile, I have to do something very important because I don't want that to go flat. So I should drink that and be back in a second. Okay, right, so I've gone to frontal mode. I don't know what that means. No, I'm just going to the front. Now, that is a box. As you can see, there's a couple of latches on it and a funny dial. Why is there a dial in it? Right, well, the reason there's a dial in it, I'll just stand that there, is because I've turned it into a stir plate. Now, it's quite simple. A stir plate is if you recognise that, a fan from a computer. 12 volts, very handy. We know lots of things that use 12 volts. Car batteries is one. Obviously adapters. Many people have adapters laying around thinking, what can I do with them? Now, this particular adapter I've got is a 9 volt adapter. The other thing is this here. Now, this is an item that you can buy from Maplins. Now, I've undone mine. If you want to do a search for Maplins, there is a number on the back of it. I believe they call them Velleman kits. You don't have to make it, don't worry. All you have to do is put a couple of wires in there, power it in and power out. Now, fans generally come with 2 wires, some have 3 because they've got voltage sensing on. Just ignore one of those wires. Now, there is something on the top that you notice. That, in my case, is a PCM or PCMCIA card, or a PC card, because people can say PCMCIA, from a singing PC, because I know it's a singing PC because it says Dell on it, and that's correct. Yes, a singing PC is a Dell. Not very funny. But double-sided tape here. In fact, it's the squashy tape. This on the top is it's 4 magnets. What you can do is get the magnets from PC hard drive. So if you've got a PC hard drive and you feel the need to take it apart, you will find a rare earth magnet in there. These just so happen were very convenient and suited my needs. Now, what I did discover with the stir bar is, as you can see there, that's fine. If I pick that up without twisting it, turn the stir bar around and lower it, that makes me think that there are magnets in it because it's trying to grab the poles. See? Right, so how does it work? Well, power. You see that? Magnet. There you go, fantastic. Now, if I plug it in, this item here, I believe would be considered to be a potentiometer, so therefore it will provide power, or a rheostat. It's just an electronic one, very similar to Scalextric cars, as you used to squeeze the trigger, the faster it went. Now this is exactly the same principle. So I have to give it a little, you hear a little bit of feedback. Let me just take that off. As it just starts going, I will actually slow it down, because that will happen if I slow it down a little bit. There you go. Now, that's what stir bar will do. So I can increase, I can actually regulate the speed. Now, that's no good, is it? So what we do, let's do a bit of simulation. That is water. I don't do any advertising, but there you go. Drop that in now. And as you can see, that's now spinning around. You will have to centre it slightly. Now, as I speed it up, we will see. I should have put some beads in there, and you'll see it. But you should see in a second, before I go mad with the speed. Let's bring it up slowly. I have to be fairly gentle with this particular stir bar, and in that size glass, I don't think that helps actually. And let's just go full whack and see what happens. There you go. Right, so it's pulling that down. Now, if you can imagine, and you can actually hear that, that's probably far too much than what we want. Now, the purpose of this is that it keeps the yeast. Imagine our yeasts are in there. And our yeasts live on oxygen. They love a bit of oxygen in their early days. This will provide some surface oxygen being pulled down into the solution, and hopefully keep it active, keep it spinning around, and we will grow stuff. Quite honestly, when we're running it in the larger jar, which is this one here, it's actually a 2 litre. I don't use anything like that. I probably only go up to about a litre, litre and a half. we probably just need it to be spinning, because there'll be more than enough surface area to pour some oxygen into solution, and that's all we're after. It's just keeping it spinning. Now, what's the alternative? I don't have one of those, and I haven't made one, but I do have my old Rosie, and it's sitting there like that. Well, personally, and this is what I have done, is that every time you walk past it, you give it a swirl. Now, you have got your lid on, which isn't going to be as fitting as it was, but if you've managed to take the lid off in a professional fashion, so it's not bent, what you could do is take some silver foil and cover it over quite happily, because that is exactly what I will be doing with that. So, bit of foil, give it a spin. Now, if you put that on there and you get a stir bar, fine. There's no problem in doing that. I used to actually do that because there's no point in transferring it into there, because you then got to make sure this is clean, and if this isn't clean, your time and effort's been wasted. There are a number of beers on the market that I used to borrow the yeast from, and I thought, well, let's try it with a turbo cider, and I've done it successfully, and it's very good. So, very simply, leave the sediment in there, give it a shake, make sure that it's got no nasties coming in by the power of silver foil and the lid, and I would say every day you could get some of your apple juice and give it a little top up, because what's in there, the rose is already eaten, so there's not enough nice stuff for the yeast to actually grow, so you need to put some of that in there. I would probably say, just as an experiment, obviously this is something you can try out, probably only 50 ml, 100 ml, and put it in there. And if you did that daily, you will notice the amount of crud that builds up in the bottom. It will be actually yeast, and then the more you get, the more you are successful in pitching. There are a number of websites out there that will provide you with pitching ratios, but we're just making turbo cider. We're trying to be quick, we're trying to be easy. I won't say the word dirty, but that makes things a lot easier. I don't want to be particularly anal about all of this, because you can be, and people are. So once that's done, say after 3 days, you'll have, hopefully, because you've given it a bit of a swill, and the yeast is to live on the apple juice, some more yeast. And then therefore, when you put it in amongst the rest of the apple juice, it will create alcohol, so your carbon dioxide and your alcohol, and that's what we're trying to do. And you'll get the flavour, and even better than that, once you finish that brew, we'll have a whole lot more yeast. You can then start putting that next batch on top of that batch, and then you will sort of grow your own old rosy type of yeast. One thing I can say is you probably need to go off into the internet, have a look at washing yeast as well, because once you've got your big batch of yeast, you probably need to cut down the amount of crud in there, and there are a number of videos on that. I don't want to do a huge video on that, because if you watch the YouTube washing yeast, there's hundreds of them out there, absolutely hundreds. So and I'm not going to inject any fun into your day, so because all you do is get a jar, you get some boiled sterilised water, you give it a swill, you tip some of that water off, you save some of the yeast, the nice white stuff, you get to see it, but it's good. You shouldn't have to buy yeast ever again once you've got this going. You could run forever with this, but you just need to keep on top of it, and that's the problem, keeping on top of it. Yeast is a huge subject. If you want to get into yeast, it's good fun, I'm sure, but you need a little bit of time. You can store this stuff, you can put it in your fridge once you've grown it. I showed you a vial of yeast the other day. That effectively is what we're doing here. You can then take that, grow it up, so as and when you want the yeast, you can start growing it. You can actually grow it from something called slants. If you have a look at slants, you can make your own. You can go and buy a gel which is called agar-agar. and you can buy yourself a petri dish, you can buy yourself a loop, you can buy yourself a Bunsen burner, and you can actually start smearing your own yeast. It really is a big subject, as I said in, I think, the first video or maybe the second video. You could probably do it for years, absolute years. Really good fun. Have a crack at it. Worst case scenario is this doesn't work, you get your backup, because you've always got a backup, and you use that. But believe me, this adds some classic flavour. So if you want to give it a go, give it a go. If you don't want to give it a go, don't give it a go. That's my battery running low for some reason. I haven't got it plugged in. So we'll go on to the next section with reference to using it within my flask and show you how to do it now. Okay, so I have placed 2 bottles of the sediment into my flask. I have placed the normal variety in as much as I topped up the bottle with a little bit of apple juice, as you can see. So it was probably half of that. I've probably put about 100 mils in here. And I've started off the stir plate, as you can see. I'm not going to let it spin like that forever. I will let it spin at a quite reasonable speed, because you can hear a slight vibration. You don't need that. I will be moving it into our dining room anyway, so it doesn't disturb anyone, but it's good to watch. It's nice to see that it's actually doing stuff. Now, the plus side of all of this is that I've managed to drink 2 bottles of Old Rosie. Old Rosie, for those who don't know, is about 7.3, which is very nice after a hard day's work. So I'm sort of pleasantly relaxed, which is quite good. Now, this is my cider, as you can see. Little punt in the bottom, just, you know, little brew name if you didn't know what that was. It's a punt. I think if it was a brick it would be called a frog, but it's called a punt. It's quite good because you can see the way through that, and this is actually a Leff bottle. I tend to use these to bottle my beers because they are 750. There's nothing worse than bottling these 500s because it just takes forever. That's why I use kegs. Now, that's another video, that's for another day. I've got a number of kegs, probably about 8 kegs, hold 18 litres each, which makes brew days so much easier. So if you're making one of those, you can make a double batch. 24 is normally a good batch because you've got to have a few samples, and then you can put the good stuff in. Obviously there's a bit of waste, but so as far as today, very quick recap. I've bought cider with yeast in it. I'm sure other ciders have it in. I'm not aware of another one which has the amount of sediment in as Old Rosie. I particularly like Old Rosie. So go and buy yourself, you don't have to buy 3, but 3 for a fiver, not a bad price. Drink 3, share 1, share 2 even if you feel the need. But make sure that you save the dregs. The dregs then either stay in the bottle. You can build up the bottle. If you don't have a flask, you can keep everything in one bottle. You can have a slightly bigger bottle. Just make sure every time you walk past it, give it a little bit of shake. Get a bit of air into it. Yeah. Don't shake it all over the place. You don't want nasties hanging around, because obviously the liquid will go up and it won't always get down. And you know, keep it all in the bottom, but give it a little bit of a spin. Yeah. It will enjoy that. Yeast likes that. Keep the lid on if you feel the need. A little bit of oxygen in there. That's what you're actually after. Very first few days, oxygen. Yeast likes that. It will multiply. It will grow. With this particular thing, what I'll do, I will take another video, but it will have to be like an interim video. There's nothing like interimming. So if you're interimming, I will do those videos for you, but pretty much I will take a snapshot of that when it is finished. I'll do one every day just to see if the build up is. At the moment it's going to be very, very, very minimal, but I'll stop it, let everything sediment out, it'll settle down, and you can see the sediment, and it will grow. So over a period of 3 days, maybe 4 days, but what's today? It is Tuesday. So Tuesday, let's say on Saturday we will brew a beer. Sorry, a cider. We will turn this stuff into cider. Now, as I said, very simple. Drink cider, keep the sediment. If you feel the need, and you really need to, you can do all this in a jam jar, yeah, or a kilner jar or something. And if you want to be extra sterile, obviously boil it. As I understand it, you can make things fairly sterile by keeping 65 degrees over 15 minutes. However, I think for yeast, if you're going to make slants, etc., you're going to keep it for a number of months. You need to put it in a pressure cooker. That is a whole different video. I'm not going to do that because the last time I did that, it was pain enough just doing it, but very enjoyable because I needed different yeast. I'd go and put it from my fridge. I stocked, I think it was about 6 or 7 yeasts. It was fantastic. I could go and pull any yeast I wanted for a particular beer 3 days prior, build it up on the stir plate, and yeah, good fun and cheap. You know, I appreciate that yeast isn't very expensive, but it shouldn't have to cost anything because this is free. Effectively, this is the aftermath of you drinking it. As to are a number of things such as this. This is me. I drink Leff. When I finish drinking Leff, I have bottles. Now these are very good because they are champagne bottles. They've got punts. As I understand, the pressure probably could stand 75 psi and upwards. You know, I'm not going to do that, but these are built for very fizzy beer, and they're fairly robust. These necessarily aren't, so I have to be very careful when it comes to bottling, but I'd always go for these, if not PET bottles. PET bottles are very safe because 100 psi, and you've got to put too much sugar in there and leave a lot of yeast in there to get that much. So hopefully this video has been a slight insight into how you can harvest, it sounds really wrong, doesn't it? Harvesting yeast. So harvesting yeast, that's mine. Check that out, nice and cool. And there we go. So that comes out there. This is my cider. Incidentally, this cider has the rosy yeast in it, and it actually has a large quantity of wood in it as well. I use oak. There is something called Brettanomyces. If you feel the need, go and have a look on the internet. You'll understand about Brettanomyces, which gives it quite a wonderful taste. Brett in beer. Good. Now at the bottom there, you will see there is a little bit of sediment. I could do exactly what I've just done with the rosy yeast, albeit that's rosy yeast anyway, sort of second, third generation. You build it up, you make more yeast. So bear with me a second. I'm actually going to say goodbye. Now I'm going to go and kill my children. Goodbye.